the worst trade in Laker history.
This is a you have to win the championship trade.
When I heard about it, I was like, wow. Because basically they gave away a jar of jelly beans, a case of Gatorade, and 6 rolls of tape.
I think the Sacramento Kings just might have made the worst trade in NBA history.
Over the last decade or so, there have been many blockbuster trades in the NBA. Some that have propelled teams to the NBA Finals, and others that have completely tanked a franchise to the point that they're still trying to recover to this day. So I decided to make a video on what is the worst blockbuster trade in NBA history. We're going to go through all the major blockbuster trades over the past 10 years. Which teams are the biggest winners and losers, which trade was the biggest steal, and most importantly, which trade in the last 10 years is by far the worst trade in a franchise's history. Cue the intro. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? Back in the 2022 to 2023 NBA season, it was inevitable that the Brooklyn Nets would blow up their core of Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving. After the Big Three just played 16 games together for a variety of reasons, but mainly due to injury. But still, when the Suns traded for Kevin Durant, it was a league-shattering trade. Not because the league didn't expect Durant to be traded, but because we saw one of the best players in NBA history get moved in the middle of the season.
Shaq was traded in 2009 from the Miami Heat to the Phoenix Suns. He was past his prime. As for Kevin Durant, he's giving you 30, 7, and 5 on 56% shooting this season, plus the two-way defense. This is unprecedented.
Despite the hype, the trade hasn't worked out so far for Phoenix, as in the last 2 seasons with Kevin Durant, the Suns have been bounced out from the playoffs by Denver in the second round. Then they got swept by the Minnesota Timberwolves in the first round last season. This year isn't even going all that well, with their big three of KD, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal having a mediocre record of just 11-8 so far this season. While the Brooklyn Nets leveraged Kevin Durant's value to receive one of the largest draft pick hauls we've seen in NBA history. The Suns gave up 4 first-round picks and a pick swap, multiple second-round picks, and 2 excellent forwards in Cameron Johnson and Mikal Bridges. You might be thinking that isn't that many picks, but when you consider the fact that the Brooklyn Nets also traded Mikal Bridges to the New York Knicks in return for 2025, 27, 29, and 31 first-round picks, and the right to swap picks in 2028, and a first-round pick from Milwaukee next year, and a second-round pick in 2025, then this trade easily favors the Brooklyn Nets. But if you think this trade is crazy, what about when the Cleveland Cavaliers went all in for Donovan Mitchell? In hindsight, the trade that sent Donovan Mitchell to the Cavaliers has to be the most one-sided trade in recent memory. In his first season with the franchise, he got MVP votes and finished as an all-NBA player. This might mean that Utah might have slightly undervalued him when they traded him for 2 first-round picks, Colin Sexton, Lauri Markkanen, and Ochai Agbaji, who, by the way, isn't even on the team anymore. It's not controversial to say Donovan Mitchell is by far the best player the Cavs have had since LeBron James left in 2018, which would be enough to make this a good trade. But what makes this one of the best trades on this list is that he has helped form an absurd starting 5 consisting of Darius Garland, himself, Jarrett Allen, and Evan Mobley, all of whom, by the way, are under 29 years old, meaning this Cleveland Cavaliers team is currently in first place in the Eastern Conference and could be here to stay for the long term. Now, obviously, the Jazz made this trade after they traded Rudy Gobert to the Timberwolves because they felt their championship window was narrow and closing. But the success Mitchell is experiencing in Cleveland is a testament to the fact that maybe Utah gave up too soon, and by that we mean instead of trying to tear down their core, if they had just added a few more role players or another star, maybe, just maybe, we would be seeing the success Cleveland is seeing now. This is by far one of the best trades in Cavaliers history, but you can't really say the same for the next trade on this list. When James Harden was traded to the Nets mid-season in 2021, many people thought that the Brooklyn Nets were a super team that nobody could stop, and it was just an inevitability that they would win the NBA Finals. Many were expecting these 3 to retire as Brooklyn Nets, but fast forward just a year and a half later, and well, the team had completely fallen apart, with each member of the Big Three being shipped to a different team, including James Harden, who was sent to the Philadelphia 76ers. In return, the Nets received a disgruntled Ben Simmons, Andre Drummond, Seth Curry, and a pair of first-round picks for what some people believed was a past his prime James Harden. Now, obviously in hindsight, James Harden wasn't past his prime, as he still won the assist title during the 2022-23 season and averaged 21 points per game during his 76ers tenure. So teaming up with Joel Embiid and rising star Tyrese Maxey could form a formidable playoff contender, right? Well, kinda. In each of his 2 playoff runs with Philadelphia, they got bounced in the second round, first by the Miami Heat and then by the Boston Celtics a year later. James Harden would get a lot of heat for this because he didn't perform in the playoffs as much as fans expected him to.
James Harden was so awful, so bad, he should actually shave his beard so he could hide his identity. That's how bad he was. I mean, it was really, really bad.
Now, following a contract dispute with the Philadelphia 76ers, James Harden would get traded to the Los Angeles Clippers. However, this trade might not be as big of a loss as the other trades on this list, despite the fact that Philadelphia lost Harden after less than 2 seasons with the team. But they didn't really give up much to get him in the first place. In fact, they benefited from this situation, because even if this trade didn't pan out, at least they're not stuck with the contract of Ben Simmons, who is still haunting the Brooklyn Nets to this day. The Brooklyn Nets couldn't contend for a playoff spot even once they traded Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, primarily because Ben Simmons' contract was holding them back so much. James Harden and Kevin Durant might not be having the greatest post-Nets experience, but the next player on this list is absolutely thriving after being traded away from Brooklyn. When Kyrie Irving was traded to the Dallas Mavericks, there was worry that he and Luka Doncic couldn't coexist due to how ball dominant both players were. But fast forward a few years later, and the pair have been one of the most fun duos in the entire NBA. Last season, the pair made a run to the NBA Finals, only to be stopped by Jason Tatum and the Boston Celtics. And despite their slow start this season, they seem poised to make another deep run in the playoffs, similar to last season. And if you want to know why, we have another video on that topic specifically. Now, year 1 of the Kyrie Irving experience was a little rough, but he was acquired in the middle of the season. There was some controversy over the fact that the Dallas Mavericks tanked their remaining games to improve their draft standing, and ultimately that worked out. They selected Derek Lively in the first round of the 2023 NBA draft, and then they made trades for PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford. They were able to bring back Spencer Dinwiddie this past offseason, in addition to signing Klay Thompson. So clearly the Dallas Mavericks are gearing for an NBA Finals run once again, and there's no reason to say that Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving can't carry this team back to the finals.
Kyrie Irving. Luka made this team relevant when they drafted him. Kyrie Irving made this team a title contender. Yes, he's going to bring that all-NBA level play on the floor, but his leadership should not go unnoticed.
As for the trade itself, all Dallas had to give up was a first-round pick, 2 second-round picks, Dorian Finney-Smith, and Spencer Dinwiddie, which would end up finding his way back on the team. In the case of the Brooklyn Nets, their hands were tied in this situation. Their future was clear. Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving no longer wanted to be on the team, so trading Kyrie Irving in a contract year to get Dorian Finney-Smith, a first-round pick, 2 seconds, and Spencer Dinwiddie made a lot of sense for them. But as for the Dallas Mavericks, buying low on a player who had a horrible reputation at this point changed the trajectory of their entire franchise, because now they're favorites to make it to the NBA Finals once again. In 2019, the Los Angeles Lakers acquired superstar Anthony Davis, and what we now know is one of the most lopsided trades in NBA history. The Lakers shipped off Lonzo Ball, Josh Hart, Brandon Ingram, as well as 3 first-round picks, which included the 4th overall pick at the time, which was then used to flip into another first-round pick, meaning that the New Orleans Pelicans got 4 first-round picks, including the entire young core of the Los Angeles Lakers minus Kyle Kuzma. At the time, fans were saying that the Lakers overpaid for Anthony Davis, and that the New Orleans Pelicans would become NBA championship contenders within a few years. They had the number 1 overall pick, which they were expected to use on Zion Williamson, paired him with a pass-first point guard in Lonzo Ball, one of the best role players in the NBA in Josh Hart, the next coming of Kevin Durant and Brandon Ingram, and they had extra draft picks to spare. They then used those draft picks to draft Jackson Hayes, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Didi Louzada, and Dyson Daniels, all of whom are no longer on the team. As a matter of fact, Jackson Hayes currently plays for the Los Angeles Lakers. The only player remaining from this trade that's still on the Pelicans is forward Brandon Ingram, who, to his credit, has blossomed into a solid scoring forward, but is currently in the midst of a major contract dispute with the New Orleans Pelicans, primarily due to the Pelicans not being willing to pay him the max, and them not viewing Brandon Ingram Ingram as a star. On top of that, Brandon Ingram's trade value is incredibly low. If you take a look at what happened to the Lakers, after they acquired AD, they went from a team who had missed the playoffs the season prior to the favorites to win the NBA Finals. The Lakers had high expectations, and after a long season that was interrupted by a global pandemic, the Lakers had done what so many people thought was possible. In the first season of the Anthony Davis experiment, the duo of LeBron James and Anthony Davis had won the Lakers their 17th NBA championship, which
Totally counts!
now, obviously, after this, things haven't worked out too well with the Lakers, losing in the playoffs ever since, but in my opinion, as a diehard Laker fan, I feel like their wounds were self-inflicted and they weren't a direct result of the Anthony Davis trade. For example, following the championship run they had, 3 months later the next season would begin, and the Lakers dealt with injuries all season long. That offseason, they decided to trade multiple members of their championship core in order to get Russell Westbrook, and they wasted a couple of years trying to make it work with him, before trading him for the core that they currently have. But this is one of the most unique trades in NBA history, because at the time, on paper, it seemed like the Los Angeles Lakers massively overpaid for Anthony Davis. But in hindsight, the New Orleans Pelicans got absolutely nothing for Anthony Davis. But this video wouldn't be complete if we didn't talk about James Harden. Yes, again, this is James Harden's second appearance on this list. His first appearance was mainly talking about how the 76ers underperformed after acquiring him from the Nets. But now it's time to talk about how he got to Brooklyn to begin with. In one of the most unique ways to force a trade out of your existing team, James Harden appeared incredibly fat to begin the 2020 to 2021 NBA season. And I don't mean like chubby, I mean extremely fat. James Harden was then shipped to Brooklyn in a 4-team trade, which resulted in Jarrett Allen going to Cleveland and the Houston Rockets getting 3 first-round picks and 4 pick swaps from Brooklyn. As we all know, the Rockets would go through a period of being one of the worst teams in the NBA. But in 2024, they're now one of the best teams in the Western Conference, and they can thank the Brooklyn Nets for helping expedite their rebuilding process. As for the Nets, James Harden was traded there mid-season in the 2020-21 season, then was traded away mid-season a year later, meaning his stint with the franchise lasted less than 1 total season with the team. Harden played just 80 games as a Net, and although he did play well, that doesn't make up for the fact that the Nets gave up 3 first-round picks, 4 pick swaps, and Jarrett Allen, who ended up becoming an all-star, for a guy who left the franchise just 1 year later.
I told you, KD, Harden, and Kyrie, forget winning a title, as my dear beloved Chris Broussard promised they would. I told you they would never make a conference finals, and it has come and gone, and they didn't.
Sure, they salvaged some picks from Philadelphia, but they still ended the whole debacle losing draft picks and gaining salary as they have to pay Ben Simmons an albatross of a contract. This is by far one of the worst trades the Nets have made in their franchise's history, which is saying a lot considering the fact that they've made some terrible trades in the past. And the next trade on this list is actually very similar to this, because it's one of those trades that started off great, but recently it's been terrible. After winning 49 games and getting bounced out of the playoffs in the first round by the Dallas Mavericks, the Utah Jazz decided that their championship window had closed, and they traded their 2 superstars, Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert. Gobert was the first to be traded, and when the deal was announced, people collectively lost their minds, because the Jazz's return for Rudy Gobert was significantly better than their return for Donovan Mitchell. The Timberwolves traded Walker Kessler, Malik Beasley, Patrick Beverley, Jared Vanderbilt, and 4 first-round picks, which is absolutely insane considering the fact that Rudy Gobert was going into his age 30 season. Sure, Gobert was a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, but why trade so much draft capital for him?
When you have draft picks and the most you can trade out in the 7 years is 4 and you trade them all, you better hit on it.
This move was strange at the time, especially when you consider that they had just given Karl Anthony Towns a max contract. But man, were the Timberwolves right. In the first season of the Gobert Cat experiment, they lost in the first round to the eventual NBA champion Denver Nuggets. But next season, they were incredible. The Timberwolves had the best defense in the NBA. Rudy Gobert won his 4th Defensive Player of the Year award. The Timberwolves won 56 games, making it all the way to the Western Conference Finals, where they would fall to the Dallas Mavericks. This was a good sign for things to come, but due to financial reasons, the Timberwolves had to trade Cat in the offseason, and things haven't been the same since. And when you remember they traded away Walker Kessler, who since has developed into one of the best rim protectors in the NBA himself, it makes you wonder if Cat would still be on the team if they had just chose to keep him and let Gobert be traded elsewhere. The trade is still going to take some time to fully pan out, but we have to bring back another familiar face face, because this list wouldn't be complete without him. After the 2016 to 2017 NBA season, a season in which LeBron James and Kyrie Irving's Cavaliers beat the Boston Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals, just to be dominated by the Golden State Warriors in the NBA Finals, one of the strangest trades in NBA history went down. The Cleveland Cavaliers shipped Kyrie Irving to the Boston Celtics for Isaiah Thomas, a few other small pieces, and a first-round pick. This was odd because why would the Cavaliers trade Kyrie Irving, who was their former first overall pick and the perfect fit alongside LeBron James? Well, in the words of Kyrie Irving, he just wanted a change of scenery and to be the #1 option, but the media simply wouldn't believe him. In my opinion, I think Kyrie Irving knew that LeBron James was going to leave after this season, and he saw making it to the NBA Finals against the Golden State Warriors to be a fruitless battle. This is one of the biggest lose-lose trades in NBA history. Isaiah Thomas was never the same in Cleveland after suffering a hip injury the year prior and playing through it. And at the same time, Celtics fans resented the fact that Danny Ainge would trade their franchise cornerstone that gave up so much for them. And for Kyrie, he was still one of the best point guards in the NBA. He just brought more drama than your average player. Plus, he left the organization a year after he said this.
Shared it with some of my teammates as well as the organization and everyone else in Boston. You guys will have me back. I plan on re-signing here next year.
It's really unfortunate because this is one of those big what-if scenarios in NBA history. I mean, to tip off the NBA season, the Cavaliers faced off against the Boston Celtics. It was an exciting matchup. LeBron James reunited with Dwayne Wade on the Cavaliers. Kyrie Irving now had this super team of Al Horford and Gordon Hayward, and the Celtics had Jason and Jalen. It was just so exciting going into this season. But immediately, Gordon Hayward would suffer a freak injury, and I just can't help but wonder what would have happened if Gordon Hayward stayed fully healthy. Kyrie Irving believes that the Cavaliers could have potentially made another championship run had he had stayed.
I definitely feel like if I was in the same maturity level I am now and understanding who I am, and I look back on that time then, we definitely would have won more championships ever.
So I'm not knocking the sides for attempting this trade because the Cavaliers had no choice but to try to get some value in return for Kyrie, whereas the Celtics were literally in the greatest position possible and were the perfect fit for Kyrie. That's why we watch these games, and that's what makes the NBA so fascinating, because who would have ever thought that this wouldn't work out? This next trade still gives me PTSD till this day. Oh, Russell Westbrook. Where do I begin? First of all, when the Lakers traded for Westbrook after being eliminated in the first round of the playoffs, there was some speculation that maybe he wasn't the best fit for the Lakers. I mean, after all, he wasn't known for his abilities as a three-point shooter, and anytime you have a player next to LeBron James that can't stretch the floor, you're gonna have a problem. But who cares, right? Sure, trading away a first-round pick and some young talent was risky, but the guy just came off of averaging a triple-double on a Wizards team that just made the playoffs. So surely there was something there, right? Well, no. Actually, this was a disaster. As in his first year, Russell Westbrook was terrible on and off the court. The Lakers missed the playoffs for the first time since they won the NBA Finals in 2019. Russ's stats dipped, the whole team's performance dipped. And when you asked about how he envisioned the season looking like, Russell Westbrook couldn't care less. No, seriously, watch!
You envision this to be a certain way. I want to know what you...
Did you envision it to look like this?
I had no expectations.
I mean, Russell Westbrook spent the entire year being a philosopher, saying he's just happy to be playing the game of basketball. You had fans heckling and booing him.
Westbrook, I'm a biggest fan. Westbrook. I said I'm a biggest fan. Westbrook.
What you call me?
Westbrook. What? Russell Westbrook. Your biggest fan. No.
I mean, I respect Russ, especially his story. He won an MVP. He's averaged triple doubles. He's a future first ballot Hall of Famer, grew up in Los Angeles as a Laker fan, and was now playing with LeBron James and Anthony Davis. And he said he had zero expectations about winning in Los Angeles?
How could you be a Laker and you had no expectations when everybody and their mother that wears a purple and gold or is associated with the purple and gold are thinking championships? I can assure you Jeannie Buss had expectations. I can assure you LeBron James had expectations. I can assure you every Every Laker that has ever existed had expectations.
This was a sign for things to come, as after the disastrous season, the Lakers moved Westbrook to the bench before trading him to the Jazz, where his contract was bought out. This is, without a doubt, the worst trade on this list. Not because of the capital the Lakers gave up to get him, because even though a first-round pick, Kyle Kuzma, KCP, and Montrezl Harrell can be decent role players on a contending team, it's not like the Lakers gave up a significant haul. This is the worst trade because Russell Westbrook was brought in to push the Lakers past the first round, and all he ended up doing was giving them their worst record since 2016. Primarily because a large portion of the salary cap was being paid to Russell Westbrook, who made the team significantly worse when he was on the court. He was traded away less than 2 years into his tenure with his hometown team and created more headlines off the court than he did on it. This was a disaster of a trade and is so far the worst trade on this list. If there's more trades that you want us to cover that you think we forgot, let me know in the comment section down below, and if this gets to 2,000 likes, we'll bring you guys a part 2. But if there's a trade that's about to happen that might break the NBA, the Chicago Bulls are considering a huge trade. This trade could see Lonzo Ball teaming up with his brother LaMelo Ball on the Charlotte Hornets. We made a whole video on that, and I'll leave it in the end screen. I'll meet you guys there, and aside from that, I'm your boy Mike. I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.